Welcome to this episode of the Smart Leaders Sell podcast. I'm Jessica Lorimer, sales coach and leadership expert, and I am really excited to dig down into today's episode. Okay, Poddies, I am super excited this week because we have an absolutely, and I'm going to say ace because it's very British and you are not super British. You haven't been conditioned to our ways yet, but I'm going to say absolutely ace person on the podcast today. Welcome, Aleisha McCormack.
Woo! Thank you for having me. I feel like I'm on holiday being on someone else's podcast because I can just relax.
It's so nice, isn't it?
Oh, I feel like I've got a cocktail. I don't have to think. Well, I do think, but I'm not thinking about, I've got to keep things to time.
Yeah, or like, oh my God, do I have to ask interesting questions yet?
Yeah,
like,
I can just feel, I'm feeling loose, getting ready.
I love it.
Your audience are like, who the hell is this woman? What's she getting loose for?
Loosey goosey. You can't see it, guys, but we're dancing. Like we're dancing. We're
shaking it out.
Ready for a conversation. So I'm really excited because I met you, and I want to say like 8 months ago, but I can't count. So it may have been shorter or longer. But I met you when you were also talking at Janet Murray's Media Influence Live event in the summer. And I remember seeing you on the stage and you were talking and you were the first woman to drop the F-bomb on the stage, which I was really grateful for, by the way, because when I had to do my talk, I was like, yes, someone else did it before me. And you came on stage and you were hilarious and you're giving really, really interesting information, which we're going to dive into later, but you're giving this really interesting information. And I was like, when I was watching, all I could think was, really want to go for a beer with Aleisha. And I approached her on Twitter afterwards and I was like, you're like one of the cool kids, and I would like to have a beer or do something. And you were on holiday straight away, and I was like, and I was so sad. And every time I go to London, I'm like, I should really send you a message, and I haven't done it. So publicly,
please, let's book it. Let's swap some calendar stuff. Let's make it happen. I would love it so much.
It would be so good. But officially, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
You are the founder of the Bridechilla, I'm going to say movement, because you've got lots of things that fall under that umbrella. So tell everybody who you are, what you do.
Well, look, there's a long story, but I'll keep it short because I know we've got places to be, people to see. I think really it sums up that I'm a content producer. I started my career, and I still do it, as a television producer. I've got a day job, which I sort of cling on to. We were talking about this off mic. It's one of those things that it's been such a big part of my life. I'll have to shed it eventually, I think, or I will literally fall off the edge of the planet. But I started this thing called Bridechilla, which started as a podcast 4 years ago now. So I'm a bit of an OG, I suppose, in the podcasting, well, certainly in the wedding sphere. My husband Rich and I moved to London 5 years ago, and I spent the previous sort of 8 years doing stand-up comedy, and moving to a new city, I was like, I just don't have the energy to start again and start doing club gigs and then go to my day job. I'll have a little break, just a short break, and then I'll go back to gigging. And I thought, I got this itch, this urge to create and to do something. I was listening to a bunch of podcasts, not about weddings, just about business and life. And I thought, having just come off getting hitched, that there wasn't really anyone talking about the truth about wedding planning, about, the emotional stuff, all of the highs and lows, the bullshit of the industry that I sort of came across. And I thought, I can't be the only one that was a bit mystified by some of the pricing, the weird attitudes towards traditions and all this stuff. And I thought, you know what, instead of doing another comedy podcast, because there aren't enough of them already, I'll just sit down. I bought a Blue Yeti mic, one I'm sure a lot of podcasters would go, right, it's your standard microphone. I plugged it in on top of an ironing board in our bedroom in our London apartment with like, beep, beep, oh, hello, yelling in the background. And I thought, I'll just give it a crack. And it was called the Save the Date Wedding Podcast, which I thought was a great name at the time. But then someone did say, you realise the acronym of that is STD, which I think now, not great for a wedding podcast. But I did that. It just, I thought I'd just do 10 or 12 episodes or whatever, but people started to listen, which was delightful. And I kept I liked the attention. My ego was fed and stroked, and I was like, all right, I'll keep going. And then eventually someone referred to me saying, you're helping my inner Bridechilla. And I'd heard this phrase before. I did not invent the phrase. I did not invent the word. It's been around for a long time. And I thought that sort of sums up what I'm trying to get across, that, wedding planning can be quite insane. It can make you feel crazy and those around you crazy, and it's completely unnecessary. But also there's a lot of families comings and goings. We're talking about money, which makes people, berserko. And so I decided to refer to my listeners as chillers, as bride chillers, and it really stuck, and people started to parrot it back to me. And I said to my husband once, about 150 episodes of this show in, I'm like, I think we should rebrand. Babe, but this is a big deal. There's a lot of work going into rebranding. I'm like, no, I just got this feeling, and I'm not into woo-woo at all. Jess, I don't like, I'm pretty straight-laced with all this stuff, but I do believe in your gut instinct, and you have that feeling in your tummy where it's going, do something. So I jumped on and I bought the trademark. And I felt really a little smug about buying the trademark. Little did I know how fucking complicated trademark law is. But anyway, and rebranded everything. So it became the Bridechilla podcast, which is what it is now. And as you said, it's sort of turned into an accidental movement, and we've got lots of different bits and pieces that come off the business now. And it's been a real trip. Gosh, that was a long story.
I love that though, because everybody, and I think, I'm at a time in my life where literally everyone I know is getting married, and everybody that comes to me, as soon as they're like, I've got engaged, instead of saying congratulations now, I'm like, oh my God, you need to go and listen to Aleisha's.
Oh, thank you.
Like, go and listen to this, because it is so different. And I think it's funny because everybody has a wedding story. Sure. Everybody knows about bridezilla. Everybody knows about a difficult family. Everybody knows about a challenging wedding. And I think it's just such a great concept, and it's so different because, I look around and eventually Sam will get around to putting a ring on it. Like, eventually he'll listen to my podcast one day.
Don't rush it. There's plenty of time. It's what I always say. Don't rush it. Just live your life.
Just like free jewelry.
Or both have a conversation and decide together. There are no rules.
Yeah.
Let it go. Yeah.
It's thing. Eventually I'll just get really bored of waiting. I'll be like, so I just decided we're getting married tomorrow. Like, it's in the calendar. Like, let's give it a go.
I've put it in the Google. It's all ready. Just turn up at this spot.
Just turn up. Like,
I like it.
Maybe write some reasons why you like me. But it is one of those things. And people keep, they put all these magazines in front of you. And every time I go to the hairdresser, she'll always talk about somebody's wedding. And the content around weddings is it's all the same. It's like cookie cutter content. Like, you could read any wedding magazine and be like, oh, I'm not sure who that belongs to.
Yeah.
And you could read any article online about weddings, brides, nightmare situations with weddings, and it's all the same stuff. And that's what I love about you. You took this really different approach to weddings in general, to engagements, to getting married, the whole shebang, and kind of took a stand for it in an industry that is so pastel. And you good in, like, your purple boots, like, yay, let's just jump all over this. How does something like that come about? Like, because that's a big shift. That's a big industry disruption.
Well, I wish I could say it was a conscious thing, but I suppose I am a really big part of my brand. And, I've heard Pat Flynn sort of talk about, I'm not relating myself to Pat Flynn, but I'm just saying that the idea that when you are, and so are you, when you are embedded in the brand and you put so much of your personality and yourself into it, it's really hard. And I'm talking about Pat Flynn, I was listening to one of his podcasts and talking about if he were to ever sell his business, it would be really difficult because he is his business. And I sort of feel the same way, although if someone wants to buy Bridechilla, good luck. I'm always open. But it is, I think I injected, when I sit in front of a microphone, I really just talk as if, when we're talking now, as I'm talking to my mates. I am not afraid to say what I think, and I know that my opinions aren't necessarily always that well accepted in the wedding industry, and I'm fucking happy about that, because I think, as you said, it's the cookie cutter stuff really, in an Australian phrase, shits me to tears, as my dad would say, because it's so boring to make everyone look the same, to say everyone has to follow the same traditions that really don't have any meaning to us as modern men and women in this society. A lot of them are completely, from the 17th century, and you're like, why are we repeating this stuff over and over again? And the idea that they perpetuate this myth that you've got to spend a bunch of money. Every year they put out these same weird, I talk about the wedding Illuminati on my show. I sort of go into this theory that there are people sitting around a big, very well manicured table, and they're all making these decisions about the industry. But this idea that they do these an annual survey that says everyone spends £30,000 a year, and you're like, this is bullshit. Don't be normalizing crazy amounts of spending. And I'm not dissing people that want to spend a bunch of money, but I think for me it came from just sitting there and saying this stuff and allowing it to have that sort of an opinion to be out there. And look, there are heaps of blogs and independent people that also share my opinions and have taken it further. And I do think the industry has huge problems with diversity, and that is something that we're all chipping away at. And it really bothers me that you just see white girls with long hair and that they all look the same and they've got pastel hair, and you're just like, hey, if you want to buy something, this is also a business decision, not just diversity for the sake of we should be promoting diversity in our society, but it's also like, you want to sell some stuff, you need to be selling it to people that look at a magazine or a blog and see themselves and can actually go, this reflects me, and you get what I'm doing. And so much of the industry doesn't, and it's broken. So I don't know if I'm fixing it, but I'm certainly being a big loudmouth in the industry, just going, wake up, you're old.
Calling normal humans to the fore.
They'll all die out eventually. But anyway,
It is one of those things that, and I think it is really interesting because I think this, like, I like that you brought up the idea of diversity. I think that's really important because I think diversity isn't just, and people are going to hate this, but it's not just race or gender or anything like that. It's ideas.
Yes, totally.
Opinions, ideas, independent thought. And I think there isn't enough of that. It's like when people decide they want to go online and express their opinion. I don't know whether this happened to you, but when I first started out online, I couldn't have given two hoots what anyone thought. I was like, nah, screw it. Like, I'm going to say what I want. And if you don't like it, well, that's fine. Don't read,
Yeah.
And over time, I think you start to buy into everybody else's stuff. And everyone else is like, oh no, but have you followed XYZ program? And have you done your 12 steps yet? Have you done your branding, your website, and your ideal client, and your this and your that? And you're like, oh God, no. And that's when it starts to kick in and you make it more complicated than it needs to be. And that's when you sort of get like osmosized. That's not a word, but I'm bad.
Oh, I like it. I'm taking it.
Like,
make it happen.
You get drawn into this, like, oh my goodness, it must look like this and it must be like that. And after that point, it's actually really hard to not come up with an independent thought, but to not filter everything you're saying for fear that somebody else is going to come out there and be like, but that's not fair, or that's not nice, or so-and-so won't like that, and they're at the top of the current tree.
There've been so many. I mean, I think the wedding industry as a whole is sort of, as I said, it's a little archaic, and I am not probably, woe is me. I'm not, going to the wedding events. I'm not the cool kid on the block in that way because I don't fit in, but I don't fucking care. And I've got a great community. I don't fucking care. It's like I'm like Mean Girls. What happened then? I don't care. Do you really care, Aleisha? It sounds like you care. But it's the idea is I don't really want to go and watch the same fashion shows, and it's not really what I talk about, and it's not what my brand is about. I think when you break down what I do, removing weddings from it, it's about empowerment. It's about learning to find your voice. I have this thing called the fuck it bucket, which I think you can, I encourage people to put all of the pressure, the obligations, crappy DIY projects that are, you're never going to finish, but you put pressure on yourself to do it while you're also running your day job and trying to keep your relationship going. So I'm always just saying to my listeners, put in the fuck it bucket. To just free yourself. And that's something I think business, anyone listening to this that's running a small business or thinking about it and running an enterprise where they are, as you said, we go on to webinars and landing pages and Facebook, and I know I'm served all this shit all the time on those, especially Facebook.
Yeah.
Hey, follow my 10-step plan and I do this. And it's always the same looking girl. Talk about diversity. So much hair. But you just like, what? It really? Because if we're all following this same 10-step plan, where is it going to end up? Just marketing back to each other, and it exhausts me. So I say to anyone who feels the pressure when they go onto Facebook or any of these platforms and are served all these ads, is just to put it in the fucker bucket and let it go, because it's not worth the time and the pressure and the stress when it comes to building your own thing. I think you've got to follow your own path. Oh, this sounds cliche, Aleisha. What's happening? I'm trying to say I think you to be aware of competition and what's going around, but then also who gives a shit, just do your own thing.
I think it's really interesting though, isn't it? Because it's almost like with all the formulas, and I say this to people all the time, like, look, the formula can't work for everyone forever.
No.
Because at some point, like you say, you end up in this weird world of everybody's trying to sell each other the same thing. They're just trying to call it something different. And that's effectively, I feel like 2018 was for the online industry. I feel like there was a big, oh, wow, everyone is selling the same thing all the time. And that's really interesting because as we go into 2019 and we're looking at, economical changes, hello Brexit, like you are upon us effectively, which is driving me crazy. But as we go into this, it's funny because now everyone's waking up to the fact that they have to be different, and they're like, oh, actually, oh my gosh, if we're the same, we're not going to sell anything anymore. And that's terrifying. And so then you go, almost completely the other way, and a bunch of people are now like, what can I call out? What can I be really negative about? What can I slam down that I was doing like 2 weeks ago?
Yep.
And that for me is really interesting because I was literally recording a solo episode earlier, talking away to myself like you do, thinking about the fact that, effectively what we've done is we've trained a generation of what could have been thought leaders out of thought leadership, because we're like, oh no, you have to be vanilla or you have to be pastel pink or whatever to fit in. And now suddenly we're like, no. Actually, now you've got to go with those original opinions you probably had in the first place. And that's really terrifying for people because it feels like they're putting themselves out to be rejected again. And the only way that they know how to do it is negative.
And I think, when you had a lovely Amanda Bond on your show recently, and she's talking about bro marketers, and, I think I just sat there nodding so much because a lot of them, they're either the bro marketers or the cookie cutter girls. And I'm not dissing the girls. This is not a problem on anyone, but you just see the same vibe of like, I'm running it's overhead photographs. It's all about, I don't know, they're usually photographers or whatever, their lifestyle, and I'm using air quotes that no one can see at home. But it's this idea to say, why do I trust you? Why is your information valuable and important? And I think you're right. In 2008, it was just like a lot of marketers yelling at each other, and it was like a cyclic thing that everyone was going round and round. And I don't know if people actually made any money in any of this stuff, but I thought it was all a bit off, and I'm really hopeful we just sort of get out of that trend now because it's boring. And also the negative stuff, the nego stuff, I would say, is also just exhausting. It's a lot of people yelling at each other.
But this is the thing, like this is the thing that, like, for me, there's no conversation anymore. So you raise some interesting points with Bridechilla, right? You can talk about it, and you're a decent human being with intelligence, which means
I hope so. Thank you.
Yay, you've just been validated. Oh my god, are we all excited?
I'll go now.
You're intelligent, you're a decent human being, and so when we see things online, we can always accept, oh great, well this is the way I want to do stuff. Equally, there are other ways that work for other people.
Totally.
But what I'm seeing in the newsfeed a lot right now is, no, there is one way, like Obi-Wan Kenobi or, Jesus. I have the light, you will follow it, and you will all become mini messiahs. And that's the bit that I find frightening, because nobody's having conversations anymore, which means that nobody can be different anymore because everyone's preaching the same shit. they're just not they're not actually practicing it. You know, the one that's really getting my go at the moment, authentic. Like, oh,
but also disruptor. I'm just like, I see authentic and disruptor. And I mean, there are genuine disruptors and respect, but I also think that there's this element that now a lot of brands like we're disrupting the linen business, or it's like, really? What the fuck are you doing? Like, what, you've put some spots on it? Well, you stripe it. We're just fucking disrupting it because we've washed it in bamboo. I don't care. You're not disrupting anything. You're just selling you more shit, and you've labeled it because you think you're edgy. So there's got to be an element of like, you know, it's the David Brent management speak that comes out over and over again. You're like, I don't pick up what you're putting down, but a lot of people do. And I think, as you said, though, eventually it will wear off and you've got to find a new trick. So yeah, it's a tricky one, but it's a tricky one. But it is, I think when you are thinking about branding and how to make your brand setup be different and not get sucked into the copywriting courses that give you, you know, here's 10 headlines that you should be using. And you're like, yeah, but if 4,000 other people have bought that document for $5 or whatever, is it really going to set you apart from everyone else? Maybe, you know, I think there are shortcuts and there are ways to go, you know, your brand and you know how to be presenting your brand. And if you know, like I swear a lot on my podcast, which is something that is natural to me. And I think a lot of people said, oh, I downloaded it because you're the only wedding podcast that had the E next to it in iTunes. And I'm like, okay, well, you know, it wasn't on purpose, but that's great.
But great.
It sets me apart from the girls that are like, hi, welcome to the wedding podcast. We're talking about blah, blah, blah. And you're like, you know, some people would like that woman talking, you know, Sharon talking about flowers. And I'm just like, well, that's not my podcast. Good on you, Sharon. But not my scene, Sharon. But I support her, of course. She should be doing her show.
Because empowerment. And I also feel like we should have a sign that says, thank you, Sharon. We appreciate
Thank you, Sharon. Have a good life. I want to know what Sharon's on. She sounds
great. Like,
I mean, she's probably on Xanax or something and having a great time.
But this is
I took it on a weird journey then. I'm sorry.
I really liked it. I'm like, you should go stand up, get a gig, you know, and I will come and watch it. I will just be dying laughing, you know. But I do think it's so true. And I think people are really afraid. I think that's the biggest thing, you know. That's when I talk to people about, well, you know, your brand, they go, oh yeah, well, I've got these really nice colors, I've got a nice little vision board, and I've got this and that. But how are you planning to stand out? And they do, they're like, well, I'm going to be really authentic. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Or they're like, yeah, I'm going to have did that sound really cynical? Oh, okay.
No, I loved it. I was on the journey with you. I was like, really? You got the colors? You got some stripes? All right.
Oh my God, I'm going to use Times New Roman instead of Arial.
You're a disruptor.
I know. I don't know how I do it. But it's this kind of thing, isn't it? You know, and you have the same conversation day after day and everyone's like, oh, you know, and it sounds really stupid, but fonts are such a big deal. I remember like 2 years ago, I started using the font Permanent Marker, and it's awful. Like, it's really thick and it is like a child drawing in a marker pen. And I started using it because it stood out in the newsfeed. And then like 3 months later, everyone was like, I'm using Permanent Marker and Oswald.
Wow.
Oh, cool. Well, I set a trend. Awesome. And then probably was like, how do I get rid of this? You know, I really like Oswald as a font. I can never get rid of that. Like, we're attached. But Permanent Marker, less so. And yet now everyone's like, oh, I'm bold because I use Permanent Marker. And I'm like, no, it's not the font. It's the way that you can actually explain what you do and why you do it. I mean, it's funny because you and Ashley Ambige are so similar. Like, when I think about bold brands, I'm like, oh yeah, Aleisha and Ashley Ambige. And I think about, you know, there are very few other people who actually I would consider to have bold brands who just kind of say, it is what it is.
Sure.
Weirdly, Danielle Laporte is another one. I would never have thought I would say that. But then I read her book last year, White Hot Truth. Amazing. Like, just amazing. Calls out the whole
add it to my list.
Industry. It's seriously, it's so good. And she says this thing, she's like, oh yeah, you know, we overcompensate and we are overly tolerant because that's what we believe compassion is. And I'm like, ooh,
wow,
it's bold, you know, but it's about what people are saying. It's about how they're showing up. It's not about, did they use a bold font? And I think that's what we need to come away from. You know, it needs to be, are you, you know, you're producing content that makes people think differently?
Yeah.
Or inspiring people or empowering people.
We've got a Facebook group. It's a really good place to be a lot of the time. And then, you know, people can be people and you're like, ugh, here we go again. And there's a lot of things, you know, in just to take it back to weddings, and you might not be getting hitched, and it's, you know, you might not relate to this at all. But I think that for me, weddings bring a lot of opinions from both family and friends about other people judging other people's shit when it's really got nothing to do with them, and saying bitchy things and thinking that no one will ever see it. And one thing that's been really popular lately, which makes me sort of sick to my stomach, are these wedding shaming groups on Facebook. And you think, how the fuck does this exist? Who has the time? I'm going to time to fucking brush my hair some days, let alone think about creating a Facebook group to diss other people's day that they find a really important, significant moment in their life. We had some problems with some people. Like, to get into my Facebook community, I ask 3 questions. It's quite heavily monitored in the sense that if anyone feels uncomfortable, we ask people to report posts. I want it to be a nice place and a place that they feel comfortable sharing their ideas and thoughts, because there are so many, like, wedding forums are the fucking nastiest, awful places I've ever hung out on the internet, and I've hung out in some nasty places. So, you know, we've been very aware of people screen grabbing and sharing other posts in other groups, and if people see them, they report. But it really, like, makes my soul a bit sad, because I think about where we've become, like, where the, you know, the internet is great. You find information, you share information. As you said, it'd be great if we talked and actually communicated in a more authentic way. But the problem is it also attracts this idea that we can't see each other or talk to each other. And we'd never, I would imagine half of the people that are in these shaming groups would never say this if they met Betty on the street and they'd shat on her wedding. They wouldn't be going up to Betty going, Betty, I thought you looked like a fugly pig at your wedding. So, you know, this is what they write. And they're like, who are you? You know, it takes away, you know, they're never, unless you're a total, I can't even say this word, but you know the word I want to say. I wouldn't say it on your podcast, but that's how I feel about it. And then that's not the sort of person you are. Then, you know, you got to think about your choices and what you're doing with your life. But there's something about, I don't even know where I was going with this, Jess. I was just I got stuck thinking about Betty and her lovely wedding that was shat on by an asshole. It just feels at the moment that we've got to this space where people are really taking advantage of the interwebs as a whole, but especially forums and groups. And, you know, 99% of the time, my group's a great place to be. And tonight I was on the tube coming home, and someone had posted a link to a story about people vaping at weddings. Now, I'm not a smoker, I'm not a vapor. It's like, whatever. And then everyone got quite defensive. Some people were saying this promotes cancer, and another someone, listen to me putting voices to these people. Another one's like, I love it. You know, I'm going to smoke weed at my wedding or whatever. And it was an active conversation, but people were also, on the other hand, very quick to get very offended about everything. And I put up a post and said, listen, this is not my scene. I'm not a smoker or a vapor, but here's the thing. I've never seen this before. This was shared not as a shamey, judgy thing. I think the original poster was just sharing it, going, this is interesting. This make for some strange wedding photos. She didn't say strange. This is, you know, a new trend. Yet people were so quick to jump in on and go, you're dissing everything. Or, you know, I find the internet a really complicated place.
I think the internet is a weird place, and I love what you said about everyone getting offended, because I think this is the interesting thing about bold brands is people get offended really easily. Bold brand, and it's why nobody wants to have one. Everyone's like, oh, but secretly everyone does. Everyone is like, oh, I would love to be like so and so, so and so, so and so. And you say, well, why don't you? And they're like, oh, well, people might not like it. And I'm like, you know, this vaping thing, I think it's brilliant. I'm like, great. So, you know, I don't smoke, but imagine you go to a wedding. You have no fear of anyone setting fire to anything, because everyone vapes. Like, and that's the thing. And I'm just like, and that would have been my first thought. I'd have been like, oh, isn't that cool? Like, if there are smokers, nothing burns down. Insurance is lower. Great. You know, and it's funny because everybody, I think in this year and this last 12 months, people have loved getting offended because we think that's what polarizing is. Everyone's like,
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to create polarizing content. I know. I'm just going to be offended by something. And then I'm going to write about that thing that I'm offended by, or I'm going to talk about it, and other people can be offended with me. And I'm like, that is not really polarizing. It's just boring because it's you whining on about something that really your audience can't get behind. You know, and
Yeah.
I think that's the interesting thing. For me, it's like, well, when we're creating this polarizing content, we're creating content, but it's still content that has a job to do. It still has to inspire, it still has to empower or motivate or commit somebody to taking some kind of action.
Yeah.
And opinions don't really, like, they don't make us think any differently, you know, unless you're Katie Hopkins and the entire world is justifiably offended by what you say. You know, Britain has some great exports. That is not one of them.
No, girlfriend needs to take a break.
Oh, yes. You know, people should not give her Facebook Live. Like, there's just not. But it is that kind of, that element of how can we say in one breath, well, you should be creating polarizing content, and in the next breath be like, but don't get offended by everything, because, you know, some people out there are going to go, well, they're one and the same.
Well, it's interesting because I jumped onto that post and said, well, the point of this group, I hope, is that we are all in different phases of our lives. We all come from different belief systems, different upbringings. We're diverse people from all over the world, and we need to respect and acknowledge that we have different opinions. And also, I had said in it, just because you don't agree doesn't mean it's shaming someone. You can't, that's not the same thing. There's a shaming someone, I think, is when you're really crapping on their ideas and making them feel bad about it. And I think we've gotten to the point now where there's a lot of infighting and a lot of, you know, chipping away at each other, when just scroll on by, for the love of God, if it doesn't affect you in a real way. Also, the angst that sometimes it causes me trying to moderate some of this stuff. I'm just like, oh my God, I could be doing a lot more stuff with my time. But you're right. If you are starting a brand, or you've got a brand that you think you could poke the bear a little bit with, think about, when you poke that bear, what purpose it actually brings to your audience. And, you know, there's lots of things I talk about that people get a bit finicky about, like, you know, name change. You know, that's a really big topic. And I could say every day there's a post from someone saying, I'm really struggling with this. And actually, you know, there are people with really dominant opinions about what, you know, it's not feminist to change your name, which I don't agree with. It's your choice. It's a fucking personal decision. People get so, you know, wound up by it. But also, for me, you know, so that is a piece of content that I would then write, and I have written a blog post about looking at the two sides, and it's probably more than two sides in that topic, but then providing value and insight into, and bringing an expert in. I have a great expert who is called the Feminist Bride, who has written, she's a women's studies, you know, major. She's written books about feminist weddings and the history and traditions. You know, you could ask her about any tradition and she'd give you the backstory about it. And some of them are really freaky deaky. But, you know, that to me, instead of just putting a post up about, well, a name change sucks or whatever, you go, hey, here's a piece of content or a video about all of the different reasons why you might want to change your name, or why you might want to hyphenate it, or both of you change your name or whatever. And then incite, like, and then ask for some conversation and discussion, ask a question there's actually of interest and value to your audience or customers or clients. That's far more interesting to me, producing content like that. And it's also shareable and memorable.
Yeah. I really like that. I think the bit about inviting your audience to participate in the conversation, you know, because I think that's what we've gotten out of the habit of. And if you look at, like, people who've built amazing brands and businesses that are amazing, they got that way not because they had, like, the boldest opinion on the block. Like, I mean, come on, Nike, really, just do it. As a tagline, if you said that now, everyone would be like, oh, it's so simple, it's so easy, and so everyone would try and overcomplicate it and make it harder than it is. But they didn't necessarily have the boldest idea. They invited people to be part of something that was bigger. They were like, be part of the conversation, just do it, take action. It's okay to start where you are. And that's what people liked. And I think that's what we don't see enough of. Everyone's just shouting down the newsfeed, I think this, believe it with me, or you're wrong.
Yes.
And there's like two options. You can be part of this club, or you are wrong. And I don't think that's how it should be.
I think that there's people really miss, and this doesn't mean if you've got 10 people that interact with your content or 10 million people. I think we really miss the chance a lot of the time to actually get genuine feedback from your customer and client base. And to be honest, for me, that Facebook group, I started it maybe 12 or 14 months ago, probably 14 months ago now. And I have used, and I say use that, with absolute pride, that group to really shape my business by asking for their opinions and feedback about product development. I've published 3 books, and we've put this thing out called an Oh Shit Kit, which is a day of wedding plan. It's a kit that you give or you buy, which just has all the emergency items you might need as a bride or a groom. It's like a double-sided tape and bobby pins, earring backs. I mean, it's random stuff, but it's stuff that I said to my community, hey, guys, what are you missing? What are you spending time on making or buying that I could make for you? And without that feedback from the audience, I would have made quite different decisions. And I think I'm really grateful for engaging. And that's not just saying I go to them and say, hey, what's the next product I can make? Because that's not how it rolls. Mm-hmm. But I engage them every day, and I ask questions every day and for their opinions and feedback. And in a very Gary V way, what is he? Punch, punch, punch. What is it? Right hook?
Jab, jab, right hook.
Jab, jab, hook. I couldn't remember that now. I've heard it so many fucking times. But the idea that that's my jab, jab, right hook, that, when I come in for the hook, it might be asking for their opinion, or, I was trying to find a new tagline for Bridechilla, and saying, the question I asked actually, it was great, was, and you said it earlier, you've recommended my podcast to engaged friends. And I'm like, how do you pitch Bridechilla to your newly engaged friends? And it was one of the best questions that I was at work, sneakily typing on Facebook, and I got like 150 responses, and it was like a whole bunch of new potential taglines and copy that I can put straight into my landing page and into my sales copy. And it wasn't done, I said, could you help me? It was great.
But this is the thing, it's about being part of the conversation, and then people don't just drop out of your world. I think, everybody is spending a lot of time to acquire customers, and it actually takes a lot of time, and it a lot of money in some cases to acquire a customer. And then what happens is people like, oh, well, we've got them now. Mm-hmm. And there's no conversation. Oh, well, we've got them, they're there. And eventually we'll want to sell to them, and that's fine. And during that point of, I want to, I've got them and I want to sell to them. For some people, that might be like 24, 48 hours. And for other people, it might be 3 to 6 months.
Totally.
Not having a conversation. And then they're like, oh, but I don't know why nobody's buying. And I'm like, well, it's because it's, it is a relationship. If you put nothing in, you get nothing back. And you can't be surprised when that happens. If you're going to do that with your boyfriend, you'd find, that he wasn't your boyfriend for very much longer. Believe me, I've tried doing this for Sam multiple times. He just won't leave me alone. Just like, But it is that kind of thing, I think the temptation is to be bigger than you are, sooner than you're ready. And I think that's what I love about the business that you've built. You are really open that you have your day job, and you actually enjoy it, and I think that's a really key thing for people to hear, is that, in the online world, everyone's like, oh, you should be ashamed. And I'm like, no, because
it's tiring.
It's a ridiculous way to be. At the end of the day, you build the business you want, not the one that you're forced to build. Just because someone got fired and gets to leave their job, and have no savings and have to build that way, doesn't mean that everybody else should be looking for that model.
And I think also for me, it's been choosing to go, all right, we're going to self-publish and produce all of our own and manufacture all of our own stuff that we sell. And I could have, I always sort of am quite candid at saying we spoke to publishers, and I have had a book published by a traditional publisher before, and it wasn't a really positive experience. I have to be honest. It was fine. I didn't really get any say in it. And when we were talking to publishers and agents here, prior to me publishing my books, they were sort of saying, going back to what we were saying at the top of the show, don't really love all the swearing. And I got a really pretty firm indicator that I wasn't going to have much control in the content. And I'm like, how do I serve my audience when I've gone to them and said, what do you want a book about? How do you want the tone of the book to be? I would feel like it would be a pretty big betrayal to then sign up with a a traditional publisher who might have been great. But I just got that feeling again where I was like, this is probably not the avenue we should be taking. So Rich, my husband, and I, he's an architect by day, also works quite an intense day job. We said, all right, well, we'll go about and do it ourselves. So I researched on Alibaba. I found a printer in China, and we found a designer to help us. And I wrote my first book, and we invested our own cash in it. And to me, yeah, going to the day job is a slog sometimes. And sometimes I'm like, fuck, I've got to go home and do my other 40-hour job afterwards in the morning. But to have that control and freedom, I'd rather do the day job and run the business now and come out in a year's time, or whenever I end up not doing the day job anymore, knowing I've built this thing that I'm really proud of and I have control and freedom, rather than following the bullshit that I read on, as you said, we see it all the time. I'm served ads all the time, like, here, you're one step away from freedom. And you're like, you're a fucking liar. And I don't believe it. And also, really? So my one step of freedom is running scammy ads like you run scammy ads and let's be a life coach and all this sort of bullshit that you're not qualified to do. I don't buy into that. So yeah, I'm not saying that I don't palpitate in the night thinking about some of the shit I've got to do, and I overcommit. And my husband's in the next room, probably nodding his head right now. But I love what I do, and I'm proud of this brand. And we talked off mic about, I've got an idea for another non-wedding podcast, and I'm really keen to get back to writing other sort of, again, not escaping from Bridechilla, but I've got so many things to make and do that, it excites me. And that's how you should feel about your brand and your future as well. So fuck it. If people are listening and they're still working their day job, it sucks and it's hard. And as Jess said before, off mic as well, she's like, you got to get a good VA, because I'm like, I'm drowning in all this stuff. And it's true. I do need to get some help and relieve some of that pressure that I put on my own self.
But I think that's the case anywhere. And I think that's perhaps what we should be a bit more open about as business owners is, look, it doesn't matter which route you choose. It's not going to be easy, because setting up a business is not easy. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it, and everyone would be Gary Vee, and everyone would be bazillionaires in private jets. And then we would have nobody to, do the technician jobs, which are just as, if not more so, important.
Absolutely.
For the times, like, I can't tell you the amount of times I've been to Tesco and been like, if there was nobody on the checkout, I don't know. I agree. Don't know what I would do with life sometimes.
There's so many people who provide value, and I think we never should underestimate that. And I think that is a huge, God, as you said, the Brexit thing worries me so much. So I'm like, how many people do jobs that other people don't want? Not to get political, let's all relax, but it just shits me off. I mean,
it's terrifying. And I think that is the thing, it's interesting, because if you want to be a business owner, I think you've got to have that expectation that it's going to be hard at certain stages. At other stages, you'll be like, oh my God, this is great. Everything's going well. We're selling loads of stuff. We've got loads of happy customers. And at other times, you'll be like, I really wish I could go back and get a job. Just any job, like literally any job in the world.
Sometimes I fantasize and then I'm like, this is not who I am. But I'm like, look at those people that get on the tube at 9 and then they come home at 5 and they never think about their job ever again. And then I'm like, that you go crazy after 10 minutes. I'm always coming up with the next thing to do. It's just not who I am. And I'm going to be honest, and no one that I work with in the day will ever listen, because they don't know about my secret life a lot of the time. Maybe they will. And then I found out about their secret life. But, I know I'm not really built for working for other people, but at the moment, and, I'm good at my day job and I get shit done, and it helps me build my, dream business or whatever we want to call it. And that's a fact, but you got to keep doing what you need to do until you don't have to do it anymore. I think that's, and it's like the people.
Everything. Jobs, brand, content, like
everything.
You've got to keep doing it.
And it's also funny, talking about podcasting, and I've been doing some talks about podcasting to wedding pros and and also just talking about how to pitch to podcasters, which I'm sure you have a lot to say about this as well, because I get so many like half-assed slacker pitches like, hey guys, love your show. And it's like, well, I'm Aleisha. It takes a second to find me on the website. instantly you've lost 100 points.
Yeah.
You better wow me in this second paragraph or you can eat a bag. But they don't generally. But also the idea that launching a podcast is really easy. And last year's quotes were, the stats were like there were 200,000 new podcasts launched. And it's like a minute amount of those podcasts that ever made it past episode 6, because everyone wants to have a podcast, but no one realizes how fucking hard it is and how much work it takes to record it, edit it, market it, upload it, the tagging, all this stuff that I think people are like, so you just sit and talk and then you hit a button and it's uploaded and suddenly everyone's listening. But then also the perception that you're going to make money out of podcasting, which I think both you and I could be quite honest and say, forget it. So unless you're making cereal or you are, running Gimlet, Google both of those if you don't know what we're talking about. It's really hard. And podcasting works for both of us because we get to market all our other stuff and talk to interesting people.
Yeah.
But the perception that you are going to have some sort of overnight success, I always find hilarious.
So it is that for me, that overnight success thing drives me crazy.
Yeah.
It is that idea that it's funny because, and I think this goes back to what we were saying earlier about content and about building a brand, right? John Lee Dumas, when he came on the podcast, he said, I chose podcasting because it's higher barrier to entry. And, it meant it was harder work in the beginning, but that the people who came to me were more qualified because they recognized that I had set something that was higher barrier to entry and they had gone out specifically to find things, that weren't just other people yelling at them on Facebook. And I think that that's really interesting because, for me, the podcast is definitely one of the things I spend the most time doing.
Yeah.
And we spend the most money on producing, and that we do all the things with it. But it's the thing that brings in the highest reward in terms of fulfillment for me, in terms of, the amount of comments we get about it. I went and spoke at an event last weekend, the weekend before, and like 8 people came up to me and went, "Oh, I love your podcast."
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. And I'm like, that's great. I don't know who you are. Like, and that's really rude, but I don't know, because when you're podcasting, you're talking to air, and
of course you are.
And I think it's so interesting, when we had Rob Walsh on, he was saying there are 4,000 female bloggers to every one female podcaster.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, we're such a rare breed.
Yeah.
Female podcasters, we're a rare breed. And if you are somebody who is also bold enough to put out a message that really resonates for you and that resonates for your audience, you're way more likely to make it into, that top 10% or whatever it is of people who actually make it past the 100th episode and, start generating decent revenue and sponsorship stuff and all that kind of thing. But you've got to have that clear message, that clear idea of what content you want to put out there. And you've got to be prepared to stick at it. It's not going to happen in 2 episodes.
I think I'm in a couple of podcasting groups on Facebook, which are great. And one of them, if you are ever looking for, if you're a female podcaster or you're interested in podcasting, it's called She Podcasts, and it's brilliant. But I do see over and over again, people are like, I'm up to episode 5 and I've only had 100 listens. And I'm like, that's fucking great. That's 100 people that don't know who you are. Maybe 7 of them know who you are. But the other, 93, is that the good math? Have found you and have listened to your content. So I think this goes back to this idea that we're always trying to compare, and we've always got those Facebook ads popping up with the girl that looks the same and the bro that looks the same. And you're like, blank out all that stuff. Honestly, if, and it goes back to the idea, the 1,000 true fans, that if you can find these people that want to listen to your message and that really want to share what you have to say and give you the time to click download or subscribe, that's great. And I'm always like the first to jump on going, yay, good for you. When everyone else is like, right, you've got to market harder. You've got to go out and do this. And it's like, stop it. Just enjoy it. And also be consistent, show up, keep producing good content, get a decent microphone for the love of God.
Oh, yes.
And care.
I love it. Thank you so much. Seriously, I could talk to you genuinely all day.
Oh,
and I'm
likewise.
Beers soon, please.
And I'm sorry for all the weird tangents I've taken everyone on this journey.
I don't know who to thank first. I'm like, do I thank you? Do I thank Betty? Do I thank Sharon? I mean,
we're all been here. And I want to say, again, we support Sharon in her, you know, she's doing that show. And can I just say, not to be an asshole, whenever I'm contacted by other wedding podcasts saying, hey, would you come on the show? I'm the first one to jump on and be in their show as well. Because I think also you got to support each other unless it's not your scene. I don't know. I just don't want to be like a fucking asshole. We're like, oh, she's dissing Sharon again.
Yeah, I don't think that's good. But I think it is one of the things. It's just, for me, it's so interesting, and it's great to have somebody on who you can actually talk honestly about, you know, what is it actually like? Why bother building a bold brand? Why bother being not anti cookie cutter? Because I don't think you're anti anything. It's just interesting to see somebody taking a stand against all of the other drivel that's out there and saying, well, you know what, that's cool, they've got their way and this is mine, and off I go and I forge my path. You know, I think that's phenomenal. And I'm just so grateful that you shared it with us. So,
oh, well, thank you. I love your show, and you get me through dingy tube rides, and you make me laugh when I hear your beautiful laugh. I'm like, oh, this is living. And sometimes I look around at the misery guts that I'm surrounded by of other people looking, and I think, well, look, they're not listening to this, and I am, so my life's better.
no, I appreciate you. I will do my car laugh just for you. But where can our brides find you? Because I know that there are people who are listening to this like, I'm getting married. All those people who got engaged on Valentine's Day. I'm very jealous of you, but also you need to now go and follow me.
Well, look, we're supportive brides, grooms, bridechillas, groomchillas. I'm very equality minded, so all of my content is for everyone. If you search for Bridechilla wherever you get your podcast, that's where you'll find the show. And also I have a range, I mentioned books and all these extra things. If you know someone that's just gotten engaged, don't buy them the same cookie cutter guide. Buy them a Bridechilla guide. I guarantee they'll have a laugh. They will think you're ace. And I will thank you. You can go to bridechillastore.com just to perv on my stuff.
I love that. I love that. And just for the record, guys, when Sam eventually gets it together, and
I'm sending you a pack.
Yeah, I would like 30 of these. So if anyone's wondering what to get me, now you know.
I'll be the first to send. Don't you worry.
Seriously, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been amazing. And guys, make sure you head over to bridechillastore.com. Go and check out Perv on all of the goodies that are there, and obviously listen to Aleisha's podcast as well. It is phenomenal. Thank you so much, and I will see you all in the next episode.